We'd like to believe I'm not influenced by other people. That's a lie. Situations can corrupt almost all of us.
You decided to cook up the Stanford Prison Experiment.
The key to the study is flipping a coin. You're a guard, you're a prisoner, you're a guard, you're a prisoner. I wanted bright, intelligent college students. They're smart, they should be able to figure out what's happening. In 36 hours, the first prisoner had an emotional breakdown. No! One of the guards said, "These are dangerous prisoners. We're going to have to show them who's boss." Each day, a little worse. In 5 days, 5 prisoners had emotional breakdowns. I got corrupted. It's out of control now. I made a big mistake.
Prisoner 819 did a bad thing. Prisoner 819 did a bad thing.
So the power of the situation gets the majority of people to do things that go against their conscience. Say to yourself, what do I have to do to be a good person? What am I going to do to make my world better?
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
It's time for you to man up, to once and for all tell your mind who the fuck is boss. I need a fucking answer. What's it gonna be? I don't know what it is about this fucking sport, but it attracts people that really need to do deep work on themselves.
I failed in this city. All these bad memories. I never really felt like I gave a fuck about me or my life. I almost killed myself, like...
Think about something that is going to drive you when it really hurts. Some kind of demon you want to fight.
This is not Pussy Man, this is Iron Man. Under pressure reveals true character. What are you gonna do? You gonna be in Chattanooga May 20th or what?
Take 24 students at random from Stanford University in 1971. Half become prisoners, half become guards. What happens over the next 7 days? All hell breaks loose. And we find that normal humans, nice university students, turn into prison guards that terrorize their victims, humiliate them, sleep deprivation, mocking them sexually, and it all goes wrong. This is the famous Stanford Prison Experiment, conducted by Philip Zimbardo. It's a fascinating look into how, as humans, we all have evil inside of us, and put in the wrong situation, and put in certain types of identities, we will all do things like that that are potentially very dangerous. Knowing that we have this evil inside us can make us more powerful, and that's what Zimbardo talks about. He's 85 years old. It's his birthday on the show, and it was amazing having him here to talk about his experiments and his book, The Lucifer Effect. I think we can learn a lot about ourselves by engaging with his teachings and with this experiment. So sit back and relax. You're really going to enjoy this show. And you're also going to enjoy what's going on inside of London Real Academy. Whether you want to start a business, learn how to public speak, learn how to accelerate your life, or learn how to broadcast yourself, we have the 8-week accountability program to make it happen. I teach them personally, and here's a little bit more about the Academy.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Professor Philip Zimbardo, the American psychologist and Professor Emeritus at Stanford University, famous for being the creator of the legendary Stanford Prison Experiment. You spent the last 50 years teaching and studying psychology and run the nonprofit organization, the Heroic Imagination Project, which teaches people to make heroic choices in their everyday lives. You've written over 600 publications and 60 books, including The Lucifer Effect, How Good People Turn into Evil, and Shyness, What It Is, What to Do About It, and it's your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Philip, welcome to London Real.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah, it's my 85th birthday, so.
What about it?
It's the first time I gave an interview of any kind on any birthday, but this is, for me, really special.
And I hope you like the cake we got you.
And yes, I'm eagerly waiting the end of our interview so we can jump into it. Look like a beautiful coffee cake.
Yes. London, what is your relationship like with this city? What's it like when you're flying into Heathrow, and what memories does it bring back for you?
Yeah, I've been coming to London for more than 20 years. I come every 2 years for the last 16 years because there's a wonderful program created by a Scottish woman, Cara Flanagan, and they bring 4,000 high school kids from all over the UK, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, within London, around London, and each for one day to hear teachers talk about the exams and term papers, and typically a British speaker talks in the morning. And then in the afternoon, me and my wife, Christina Maslach, we talk about our research, the prison study, research I've done on shyness, new research on time perspective. And now what I'm doing is on, it's called Man Interrupted, how boys are living in a virtual reality. And my wife is the queen of burnout. So she tells them about how she went from being the heroine of the prison study to beginning to study prison guards and people who work, poverty lawyers, and how many of them use the term being burned out, giving too much. So she's the one who studied the mismatch between people and jobs, and then has come up with great solutions. So we've been doing that for 16 years. We come every second year.
Wow.
And so it's exciting. So we get to know London.
Okay. And she's the woman that made you stop the prison experiment at Stanford.
Yes, she is.
You married her the next year.
She is the heroine, and we got married the next year, which is 45 years ago.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah.
And look, we're obviously going to talk about that experiment, but I wanted to talk about you and where you grew up and what was that like and how that might have affected your later research.
Yeah, I grew up in poverty, serious poverty. My parents were second generation Sicilian immigrants. My great-grandparents, I'm 100% Sicilian. My paternal grandparents came from the east side of Sicily near Palermo. My maternal grandparents came from Agira, which is near Catania. And one was a barber, one was a shoemaker, and totally uneducated. And in those days, and even recently in Sicily, there was no value to education. Because of the mafia influence, kids would say to me when I talk about the reason I'm here is, the only way I differ from my grandparents is I got educated. And education is the way out of poverty. That is, it's the only way that you gain any status in the world. And the kids would say, hey, it doesn't matter what you know, it only matters who you know. So this is the idea of connections. And I said, that used to be true, but it's not going to be true anymore. Because you're competing with young people around the world who are getting more and more educated. So I'll tell you a little later. So I started a foundation to send high school kids to college. I'll tell you now. So teachers pick the dozen smartest kids, and then we pick typically 6 boys and 6 girls from my grandparents' town called Camerata. It's in the mountains near Palermo. And then we have a big ceremony at City Hall. We give them each 1,000 euros and certificates, and it's a big honor to their parents. And then we follow them up, every year to be sure that they're going to school. And most have been very successful. Most of them have graduated. They're in business. They're starting businesses.
And is education being embraced now more in Sicily?
More and more being embraced.
And you're an example of that when you go see students
anywhere
in the world.
Yeah, and I say, I was a poor kid. My father didn't even go he dropped out of school in primary school. And the notion was, you finished high school because you had to. At 16, you didn't even have to finish. At 16, you could quit. And my father's thing is, you go to work. And when I finished high school, I loved school because it was clear to me school was the way out of poverty. So then I graduated high school. My father said, "Okay, now you're going to go to work." I said, "No, Dad, it doesn't make sense. If I get a college degree, I'll make more money." And then he said, "Okay, if you're not taking in money, if you're not bringing money in, you have to support yourself." So I worked every night at the St. James Theater on Broadway as a concession boy, checking hats and coats, selling programs of the show, records and things of that kind.
This is in the 50s then?
In the 50s.
And what was the Bronx like in the 30s and 40s?
It was a ghetto. It was, a ghetto of immigrant children from all over. And it was, it's all we knew. So for us it was exciting because it's a time when kids lived on the street. Any time of day or night, you could go down and there'd be some kids there. And it was your playground. We played on the street. We played stickball with like a broomstick and a Spalding ball. We played games in the street. And girls were, boys played together, girls played together. And your mother would call you from the window, "Philip, come up for dinner." And you went up as quickly as you can and back down. The only time we would also, there was no television then, but you would listen to The Shadow, or Captain Marvel programs. That's the only time everybody was there, and then you came back down.
Okay.
So it was an exciting time. The only thing that was terrible, and it's true of ghettos anywhere in the world, there are always young men, who are there to tempt kids to do criminal things for money, to break into a store at night through the transom, to take a package from here to there, and you knew it was narcotics, or to get girls to sell their bodies. And I remember the standard fee was $10. $10 in the 40s and 50s was an enormous amount of money. And I had friends who gave in to temptation. And some of them got caught by narcs and went to prison, and their whole life was ruined. And me and other friends didn't. So as a little kid, I was asking a basic psychological question. What's the difference between people who give in to temptation, who are seduced, by money, and kids who can resist? Now, as a little kid, so it's a psychological question, but I didn't know how to answer it. And the simple answer I gave at the time was, I thought it had everything to do with a mother who was loving and caring, but also had a moral compass. It would say, this is bad, this is good. Don't do this, do this. And ultimately, don't do anything that brings shame to your family. So that was like guiding principle. And then when I got to be a psychologist, it turns out here's a whole area, understanding the nature of temptations.
And so that's not true. Does it have anything to do with upbringing and moral code, or is it about the environment?
No, it is about the environment. But I'm saying in the same environment, but even all the research that we've done later on situational forces, not everybody gets seduced. Not everybody blindly obeys authority. It's the majority. So the power of the situation gets the majority of people to do things that go against their conscience. So for me, nurture is more powerful than nature. But nevertheless, there are kids that nature gives a push in a good direction or a bad direction.
Okay. And you also felt a lot of racism back in the day. I mean, people forget that, Italian immigrants were the lowest of the low at one point, and now Italianness is celebrated in America.
Yeah. No, see, each group that came in, so America is a land of immigrants. Everybody in America is an immigrant except for the Native American Indians who live on reservations under terrible conditions.
Right.
So each group that came in, I think it was first the Germans, and then the Irish, then the Italians, and then later on Africans, migration of blacks from the South after World War II, from the South to the North. And you're discriminated against. The largest group of people who were lynched in the South were Italians, more than blacks.
Wow.
And there was a whole thing about, I won't get into detail, but it was 9 Italian Americans who were lynched, allegedly for raping a woman, and there's no evidence of it. And it was lynch, meaning they put them in jail for a trial, and people came, took them out of jail, and lynched them in a single lynching. I'm pretty sure it was 9 men.
Okay, and that was the single biggest one.
Single biggest one.
Okay, and
America.
You felt that growing up in the Bronx as well.
Yeah, we always felt where we lived, there were these mini ghettos, meaning everybody on this street was Italian. Around the corner on Beck Street, everybody was Jewish. Up the corner on 151st Street, everybody was Irish. And that you met in the corner grocery store, or the later on the bottega, the grocery store or the candy store. So for me, it was exciting. I mean, it was vibrant. That's the thing. It was vibrant, and nobody discriminated against each other when you were in that neighborhood. But you never left the neighborhood. I mean, in those days, the New York subway was 5 cents. And for 5 cents, you could travel a whole day. Like they talk about in Boston, MTA.
Yeah.
You'd ride all day. So, and we used to do that. Just get on the train. You could go all the way to Coney Island to go to the beach, and it cost 5 cents.
I want to talk about the experiment, but I also want to ask you, if you look back at your life kind of in the 50s and 60s, what were the questions you were asking yourself that led you up to doing, this famous experiment at Stanford?
Well, I was always looking at, why people did evil. So instead of focusing only on the kids who gave in or not, what were these guys like who corrupted kids? And then again, I grew up in the Second World War. If I was in Germany, would I have become a Hitler Youth? When you look at these things, it was so repulsive. What they did to Jews. Now again, I didn't mention earlier, of course, there were always Jewish kids, and we envied them because they were always the smartest. Well, they really weren't always the smartest. They simply worked hard. Their parents insisted that they do the homework.
That was a value for them.
It was a value for them, and it was not a value for Irish, for Italian, for Armenian. Well, it was for Armenians. So again, but in this neighborhood, we had Armenian friends, Jewish friends, black. It was really our gang, one or two of each.
Okay.
Yes. So again, I was just curious about, people whose career was doing bad things, and curious about this guy Hitler. How could he see the world in this distorted way? But then, more than that, how could he create a system which got so many people not only to believe in him, but be willing to do whatever he said? He said, Jews are inferior. Jews are inferior. Jews have to be segregated. Jews have to be sent to concentration camps. Jews have to be cremated. And I'm saying, and you see these pictures on the news of kids like me, marching in parades with, looking like Hitler, being admired.
Right.
The Hitler Jungen, yeah.
And did this cause you to investigate this kind of electric shock test? I mean, this was before your Stanford Prison Experiment.
No, see what led me to do first is to say, how could it be that someone like me could knowingly harm somebody who was also something like me. And so I first did research on what I call deindividuation. What happens when you take away somebody's identity? Well, this is what being in the military is. You look at a military parade, everybody is identical, you know, and in America, soldiers are called GI. GI means government issue. You're not even a person. When you're there, you are the issue of the government. So I did research where I was teaching at New York University, and I had students in my class. All students had to be part of 3 or 4 experiments as part of the course. And so I had women come to my laboratory in groups of 4 at a time, and we said, we're interested in how people perform under stress. When you're stressed, does it reduce your creativity? So here's 4 girls. I said, so you're going to meet 2 women, other students who are trying to be creative under stress. Your job, stress them, okay? How are you going to stress them? You're going to give them electric shock, meaning when at various times, randomly, you're going to press a button, and you can hold your finger down as long as you want, up to I don't know, 5 seconds, and she and I will be behind a screen, and she's going to try to ignore the shock, and I'm going to ask her questions about creativity. And the key is for half of this participants, I put them in hoods, literally like Ku Klux Klan hoods with little eye things, and we took away their names. He said, "You're 1, 2, 3, 4."
Okay.
And
so
then,
you were always a little crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
and then we compared them to other women who we made to feel special. They wore name tags, Marcella Weinstein, Jeannie Myers, and so the question is, everything is the same. You're going to give electric shock to somebody trying to be creative. Of course, the women behind the screen with me were models. They pretended to be shocked. And what happened was simply where we took away your identity and put you in a position where you were permitted to harm someone, they gave twice as much shock. They held their finger down twice as long, and they did it for the entire 10 minutes. And so, where they were, and it was twice as much as women who were made to feel special. So again, it makes you think about the Mardi Gras, situations under which people change their identity. And when you do, you now can begin to do things you never could think of before. So, but it's also the situation. So in the Mardi Gras, it's having fun. So people get drunk, you're more likely to have random sex. But again, in military, in the war, I put you in a uniform. It's like just being put in a hood, or I put you in Ku Klux Klan. I cover your identity, and now you can do things you would never imagine doing under normal circumstances.
Which is acts of violence.
Yes.
Acts of dehumanization.
Right.
All right, so the seeds of the Stanford Prison Experiment were planted at NYU when you were doing research there.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, going back to the Bronx, in 1949 and 1950, I went to a school called James Monroe. He's one of the early presidents of the United States. And sitting next to me was a little Jewish kid named Stanley Milgram. And Stanley Milgram was the one, as a kid, he was saying, could the Holocaust happen in America? Could me and my family be sent to concentration camp? And other kids say, Stanley, don't be stupid. We're not that kind of people. And I remember I can hear his voice saying, how do you know what you would do until you're in the situation? I'll bet they thought the same thing, when they saw other kids doing bad things. And then he was the one in 1962 and 3, he devised the most dramatic, unethical study ever done, in which young men, ages 20 to 50, not students, were put in a situation where they were encouraged to give electric shock to someone else who was trying to memorize information. And the cover story, the big lie was, we want to see if punishment improves memory as well as reward. So that was the big lie. And the point was, in front of the teacher was a big shock generator with 30 switches, and the authority was in a white lab coat. He was really a biology high school teacher, but the white lab coat and so he's telling you, if you're the teacher, that your job is to deliver shocks of increasing intensity each time your student makes a mistake. And it begins with 15 volts, which there's no reaction. But then it goes 30, 45, and so forth. When it gets to 100, the learner begins to yell and scream, hey, you know, this is too much. And then when it gets more, the learner says, I have a heart condition, I don't want to go on. And in every case, people are basically good. They turn to the experimenter in that white lab coat and say, I don't really want to go on, I don't want to harm an innocent person. The experimenter says, I'm sorry, you have a contract. You took your money, it was $5 in those days. You must go on. So people dissent verbally, but the important thing is, what do they do behaviorally? 65% of these men went all the way to 450 volts. When it gets to 375 volts, there's a scream and silence. And you see people say, hey, are you okay? And silence. At that point, if you step back, you're a grown man. You're supposed to be helping improve somebody's memory. He's unconscious. So everybody should quit at least then. And everybody who gets to 350 goes all the way to the end. The most dramatic thing is, before Milgram began his study, he interviewed 40 psychiatrists at Yale Medical School. He said, what percentage of American citizens would go to 450 volts? They said, on the average, only 1%. How wrong could they be?
1% is sadistic.
Yeah, sadistic. In fact, it wasn't 1%, it was 65%. And so his study was now.
What does that say about humanity?
Well, it says we have less free will than we believe. We'd like to believe my decisions come from within inside of me. I'm not influenced by other people. I'm not influenced by mass media. But in fact, that's a lie. Who we are is, in part, what we are surrounded by. Who we are is what our friends think. Who we are typically is what politicians think. Who we are is what the anchor of the TV programs that we watch often. So in America, if you watch Fox News, the more you watch it, the more right-wing Republican you'll be. Right. If you watch other kinds of news, the more likely you are to. So you begin to watch something that fits some of your beliefs, and suddenly their views become yours.
And we're capable of evil deeds.
And much more capable.
And most people walk around and think they are not evil.
No, most people think they're good, and in fact they are. But say, you know, when
they're not.
When I focus on nurture rather than nature. You know, especially when I talk with young kids, most people are really good. They're kind. They want the best from other people. Right. But then, you know, you put in poverty and you see the income equality. You see, you know, why can't my father get a job when this kid's father, you know, who's less smart than my father, has a great job, he has a connection, and so, and again, for a lot of us, there's the ugly sins of jealousy, of envy. You know, rather than saying, hey, if somebody's got something good, then I should figure out how did they get that job. And for me, it was, I don't need any of that. All I need is a good education. So that what drove me to not only get educated, but to love school, to love doing homework, to be a teacher's pet, from kindergarten through graduate school.
And two things about this shock experiment is, one that I noticed is this incremental change. You don't ask anyone to start at 400 volts.
No, and nobody would.
Right, and yet, and it's the incremental, and you could say this was the same as the rise of the Nazi Party.
Perfect.
Is the reason why, and you had an authoritative figure that removed your responsibility a little bit.
Yeah. So he's telling you what to do.
Right.
But really, but this authority is really taking away your moral conscience. And why are you doing it? He told me to do it. He told me so. Now you could quit at any time, obviously. And so Milgram's study, now the other thing about Milgram's experiment is it was the first one publicly judged to be unethical. Now, if you read the article he wrote, you would not be concerned at all. It's only because he was the first researcher to make a movie. He wanted to be actually a documentary filmmaker. So he made a movie called Obedience, and you could see
the shocks,
the anguish in the people saying, you know, come on, say, please get it right, please get it right. And then they get it wrong, and they're yelling and screaming. And you could see the anguish, and they're turning to the experiment and say, I really don't want to go on, you must go. So it was.
And the shocks were real?
No, the shocks were not real.
Okay, but
so that's the important thing. The person being shocked, your student, was a Confederate. pretending. He was actually in another room pretending. It was a script. To keep everything the same, there was like a recording of yelling and so forth.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, and at the end of the experiment, you were introduced to the guy, and he said, "Oh, you weren't shocking me," but still you felt guilt because you thought he was getting shocked, and you kept doing it.
Okay, and so because he filmed it, the wonderful power of multimedia, it was now deemed to be the first study that was considered massively unethical.
Until mine.
Until yours. So you saw this and you thought, I want to do something just like it and film it and everything.
Yeah, see, but again, Stanley and I were friends. We were in the same class. And I talked
at NYU at the time.
No, this was in high school.
In high school, okay, right.
James
That's a
High
weird
School.
coincidence.
Yeah, what?
That's a weird coincidence.
Yeah, very
the two
weird.
of you would go on to...
In the same class, and we literally in 49, we were together one year, 49 and 50. And, but then I talked to him after he did his research. He actually went to Yale, where I had been a graduate student, and I had just left to go to NYU. And he did his research at Yale. Now, again, for your audience, is NYU, Yale is on the East Coast of America. Stanford, where I taught, I did the prison studies on the West Coast, so it's 3,000 miles apart.
Explain the differences between those two coasts.
Oh, they're enormous. People, in fact, all social movements in America began around San Francisco. Rock music began around San Francisco. This is a Jerry Garcia tie. The Grateful Dead, The Who. I mean, all American rock groups started there. What happened is people could go west. And when you go west, you don't have family. You don't have grandparents. You don't have tradition. So people coming to the west in the San Francisco area, they were not bound by tradition, by the way, this is the way we do it here. And so people could create, and they did. So the hippie movement it was in San Francisco. And as I said, there would be rock concerts in the parks for free. And it was really, I got there in '68, so '67 was the summer of love.
That was '67,
yeah.
Okay.
But again, it was this whole the summer of love and caring and sharing and caring, sharing, daring. So it was always an exciting place to be. It's less now because now it's a high-tech area, it's more traditional. But for this, again, the anti-Vietnam War movement almost started in the Bay Area. I mean, and then moved elsewhere.
And gay rights, Haight-Ashbury,
Yeah.
69.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
And gay rights, women's rights.
So you're in the middle of it. That was an intentional choice of you to go west.
Yeah. Well, the intentional choice was Stanford offered me a great job.
Okay,
you know,
it's a great school.
Yeah. So if you're a professor, you can apply for a job, and essentially they take a very few people. But I had a reputation of being a good. I'd love to teach, and I had a reputation of being really a good teacher. And I'd done, even though I had only been out of graduate school 8 years, I had done a lot of research, and I published. I mean, it was. As an academic, it's clear, publish or perish. So when you do something, you don't just talk about it in conferences and things, which I did, but you have to publish. So I knew that, and whenever I did something, I talked about it at conference, and then I published it.
Okay.
So Stanford blessed me. Hello, come here, New York kid.
And so how long were you at Stanford until you decided to cook up the prison experiment?
I got there in '68, and I did the study in 1971. And the idea was, in Milgram's study, it was all about an individual authority telling you to do something wrong. And I said, there's not many examples like that. Maybe in the military, sergeant would say, take that hill or kill this traitor. But usually, we're in a business, we're in a corporation, we're in a gang, and no one person tells you to do this. Everybody else is doing it, so you see what everybody else is doing.
Right.
So I wanted a situation where it was not an individual authority telling you or showing you what to do. It was, you're playing a role. You're the foreman. You're the manager. And in that role, there are role expectations. When you play this role, this is what you should be doing. And so that's what I wanted to do. So I said, and I wanted college students. In Milgram's study, it was men ages 20 to 50. It had one group of women that behaved the same as men, meaning 2 out of every 3 gave the shock. But I wanted bright, intelligent college students.
Why? Why? Because they're untainted?
Well, less, they're more untainted, but they're smart. They should be able to figure out what's happening, and refuse.
But you knew they wouldn't.
No, I didn't know. I really at the beginning.
Okay.
Because also it's 1971. A lot of these kids are anti-war activists. The civil rights movement was starting. All of them hate police because students who are revolting on campus against the war, often the university administration would bring police onto the campus. And in one place in Ohio called Kent State, the National Guard actually shot and killed students who were protesting, which is unheard of. So students hated cops and hated prison guards. So when we began the study, nobody wanted to be a guard. I mean, I said you could be what do you choose? Nobody wanted to be a guard. And now
you selected a group of what? How many students?
There were 24. We put an ad in the Palo Alto Times, the newspaper, saying, wanted college students for study of prison life. Will begin on August 14th. It'll go one to 2 weeks, and you'll get $15 a day. Now, we did it at that time because summer schools were ending then, and I know students had 2 weeks free before starting school in September. So, and I think students could use some money. Therefore, we got a lot students from all over the country. They were not Stanford students.
Okay.
Only 2 of the students in the experiment were from Stanford. In fact, 2 of the guards were brothers who had been at Stanford in summer school.
Okay. And you did psychological profiles, and they were all
personality tests, psychological profiles, physical profiles. We picked 24, normal, psychologically normal, physically healthy, and then the key to the study is it's like flipping a coin. You're a guard, you're a prisoner. You're a guard, you're a prisoner. And then we validated that by putting the guards in military uniforms with symbols of power, billy clubs, handcuffs, whistles, and then idea I got from the movie Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman.
Of course.
I put them in silver reflecting sunglasses. I should have brought a pair for the audience. And that meant people couldn't see their eyes. So there's a kind of de-individuation.
Okay. Had you researched each one of these aspects, or you just knew?
No, I knew.
That this would separate them from their individuality and their identity.
And then for the prisoners, we wanted to put them in a different kind of uniform, a simple smock, and we took away the names. They were a number, actually Boy Scout numbers we sewed on, and they became the number. So they had to remember their number, remember all the other prisoners by number. The guards would refer to them, 8612, 3415, 7289. They became a number rather than a person. And again, that's really critical. So even before the study evolved, once they accepted the fact that they are a number, and then in those days, again in the 70s, everybody had hair, from the song, the play, the movie hair.
Long hair.
So typically, if it was another era, you'd say, we got to shave off your head as they do in the military. But instead, we put women's nylon stocking caps on to cover. So now they all look the same.
Okay. The prisoners had
stockings
stockings on.
Look the same.
Okay. And you gave them like a smock and no underwear as well?
A smock and no underwear.
Which again kind of dehumanizes them.
Yeah, dehumanizes, but also it feminizes them a little. So if you bend over, your butt is sticking out. So again, we put a lot of time. It was me and 2 graduate students and 1 undergraduate. That was my staff.
Did the administration have to approve this study?
And they did. It was kids playing cops and robbers in an experiment. Now, although it was 1971, Stanford University had just developed a human subjects research committee. So I presented what we're going to do. I said, here's why we're doing it. Nobody's ever done anything exactly like this. And I said, we're going to be videotaping. Any one of your staff could come down and observe what's happening. And they came down the first day, and the first day nothing was happening.
Right, and you videotaped it. Why? Why did you know that was important? Because back then that's hard to do.
Yeah, well, we only could afford 13 hours because in those days it's 1-inch Ampex tapes, and then it cost $100 to develop it. But I knew we wanted to see the progressive change over time. See, in Milgram's study and most research, it's 1 hour or less. Here it's 24/7. There are 3 prisoners in each of 3 cells, so 9 prisoners at any one time, and there are 3 guards working 8-hour shifts, one after another. And then we had replacement guards, replacement prisoners.
And you physically arrested the students as well with the local police.
Yeah, so I'm glad you remember that, because for me that was the key to making the studies work instantly.
You're kind of a Hollywood showman a little bit, Dr. Z.
Yeah. I thought actually an alternative career would have been, I would have been Clint Eastwood, I think, a Clint Eastwood type. So what I did was, I knew we had to, all the kids came down, they signed the papers, they signed informed consent, saying, if you're a prisoner, you have minimally adequate diet, you will be under stress, but anytime you can't handle it, all you have to do is tell the experiment, I quit the experiment, and they signed that thing. So they all knew it was an experiment. And then we said, we're going to randomly assign half of you to guards and half of you to prisoners, whether or not you want to be that. But now I knew if they came down and said, okay, I'm here for the experiment, if they voluntarily gave up their freedom to the prisoner, they had the power to take it back. So what I did is I worked with the Palo Alto Police Department to have real policemen in a real police car go to the dorms or homes and make a very realistic arrest. And say, are you Billy Johnson? Or if they came to the home and the mother, I'm here to arrest Billy Johnson, violation of Penal Code 459 PC, armed robbery or burglary, breaking and entering. And they gave the kid his right, put handcuffs on, put him in a squad car with the sirens wailing, and brought him to the real jail. Fingerprinted them, took a picture, and put him in a jail cell. So now, even though the kids know this must be related to the prison, the police were really without telling it, they acted the role. They say, you kids think everything's a joke. You'll see when you're stuck here for,
So you
forever."
shocked them.
It was a shock.
Even though they knew better, they knew it was an experiment, now you've actually shocked them.
Well, they knew it was an experiment, but here's this, they're doing everything they see in the movies done to criminals.
Okay.
And then...
How did you get the police on board? Bought them all dinner, tickets to a show.
Yeah, it's... what I did was, because the police were called on campus to quell student anti-war riots, and there was a lot of hostility between the police and town gown hostility. And what I did is I organized a program to create positive relationships. I had policemen come to the dormitory where I was a faculty member and eat with the students. I had students ride around in squad cars. And there was a new police chief who had me come and say, I like what you're doing. And he said, anytime I could do a favor. I said, bing.
Okay.
I said, we're thinking of doing this study, and I'd like to have some of your rookies play the role of prisoners so they get a sense of what it means like to be a prisoner. He said, great idea. And then I said, so it's going to begin on Sunday, August 14th, and so I need a squad car with 1 or 2 policemen. I go down on August 14th, on Sunday morning. There's a sergeant. I said, I'm here. Captain Zerka said, he said, he didn't give me any orders. And of course, coming from the Bronx, I never trust anybody. And I said, I have here with me a cameraman from Station 2 to film this. And I did. I brought a cameraman down because I said, here's this dramatic thing. And just then, 2 cops come in, finishing, say, Sarge, we're off duty, we're going down. And I said, going home. And I said, gee, it's too bad because we're about to film arrests. And I still remember, one of the cops took out a comb, combed his hair, and I said, we're home free. And so they did the arrest, and that really started it. So that jump-started the study. And then what happened was, very quickly, each group got into the role.
And the plan was 12 prison guards, 12 prisoners, and you were going to watch them for a week or 2 and see what happened.
Yeah, initially we were going to go for 2 weeks, and just, it's
a long time.
It was exploration.
Right, okay.
It's a long time because it's 24/7, and what happened, I mean, at any time, one of the 4 of us is asleep. At any time, there are parole board hearings. We made the simulation realistic. We had parole board hearings headed by an ex-convict, Carlo Prescott. We had parents come down, visiting day. We had prison chaplains come down to interview the kids. We had policemen come. So things were happening all the time. And then in 36 hours, the first prisoner, 8612, I still remember his name, Doug Corpy, had an emotional breakdown because he had been the ringleader of the of prisoners against the guards. And the guards abused him, stripped him naked, put solitary confinement was a closet. And the rule was he could only be an hour, but they kept him hour after hour.